Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
The Ticket. Podcasts are brought to you in part by Lewis Jewelers, the official jeweler of The Ticket and proud partner of Michigan Athletics.
Because, Michigan State in almost every other game, they finished stronger than the other team, and they just didn't do that in this case. I think credit to Jeff Brom. He called offensively a really kind of a masterpiece fourth quarter with a lot. He had the Spartans on their heels. But yeah, that was not the tough, resilient Michigan State team that I expected to see, or that we've been conditioned to see this season. It's obviously hard to go from this emotional home victory and then go on the road and be just as good. But I felt like Michigan State was just not strong down the stretch the way that I have come to expect.
Their pass defense is exactly what I thought it was. I said, as good a game as Cade McNamara had, and he had a really good game, and said after that contest, there were 500 yards on that football field. And so it's not surprising to me that Aiden O'Connell threw for 536. He could have thrown for 600 yards on that defense. And so, the question now moving forward is, will they lose again? How many yards? Because Michigan obviously needs them to lose again. They don't own the tiebreaker with Michigan State. And then Michigan has to take care of its own business. So you look at this race now, the games, the importance down there in Happy Valley, it's magnified. Of course, Maryland magnified. But they're in position for that Ohio State game at the end to have the same kind of meaning that it had before they lost to Michigan State.
Yeah, no, and Ohio State just, forgive the play on words, they just don't have the edge that I've seen in past years, and literally they don't have that edge rusher. Michigan's going to have the best edge rusher, basically the two best edge rushers in that game, and not to say that Ohio State is a bunch of stiffs. I mean, they're going to have athletes everywhere, but I feel like Ohio State has shown a little bit of uncharacteristic weaknesses on defense. We've seen it a couple times, and of course they're going to bring their best game for Michigan. But I feel like this is Michigan's best chance to beat them in several years. Now, that said, going to Penn State with Clifford healthy is hard. And really, the schedule's so backloaded with Michigan State and Penn State and Ohio State all within basically the span of a month is brutal. So it'll be a great test for Michigan. Corum obviously being hurt, and then making sure they're healthy is key. But I do think the chance is going to be there because I do think Ohio State's going to beat Michigan State. C.J. Stroud, I think, is going to throw for a lot of yards. I think it's going to be enough. So I think Michigan, if they beat Penn State, is going to get that chance, and I think that's going to be a big game. And the committee, people, I know a lot of people feel like Michigan gets the short end of the stick in these refereeing decisions, but the committee's been very nice to Michigan, putting them 7. They're going to be right there if they take care of Penn State. And
in that vein, isn't it, I should say, beneficial for Harbaugh to talk about? He was asked a question about officiating, so he answered a direct question. The Big Ten, I guess they told the Free Press they were surprised that he talked about it publicly because you're supposed to keep their incompetence to yourself, I suppose. But doesn't that help the case? Like if you are sort of trying to leverage that the outcome or the impact of the officiating, sort of leverage that a bit to your benefit, don't you need to talk about it? Doesn't that help influence if you're thinking about Michigan lost a game versus some of the other one-loss teams, the fact that Michigan's loss was impacted so obviously now by officiating, doesn't that benefit Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things I hate about the committee is it's so political. And I think that means you have to play politics, and I think that's part of the bargaining process. I want to, I heard what Mel Tucker said yesterday, and I actually agree with him. I think that if you talk too much about the referees, it gives sort of a mental cop out to your team. So I assume and hope that Harbaugh is saying, listen, that game is over. You're going to have to play a lot better against Penn State and Ohio State. That level of play is not going to be good enough for the rest of the season. I assume that team knows it. So that is a downside that Mel Tucker, I think, is smart to mention of talking about it. But yeah, if he's asked in press conference, and if he was told by the Big Ten that they got it wrong, I think, as a member of the media, I want transparency. I want to hear everything that was said. And I do think it helps Michigan if it's put out there that, Michigan got hosed a little bit on that play, at least according to the Big Ten. And I think that gets into the committee's minds.
So I just want to mention, just for, just to get all the information out there, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mel Tucker was complaining about officials to the media, just to throw that out there.
I mean, you guys know how I feel. I feel like it's a lame excuse to just complain about the referees. I mean, I just feel like, and it's whether it's the Michigan game or Michigan State or Florida it happens all over the country. I think it's lame. I think it's a poor excuse. I think that if you're gonna win these games, win them do enough so that the referee can't undermine you. That's how I feel about it. However, I agree with what you said, Sam. I think that in this environment, if the committee is making an eye test, basically a subjective decision that isn't just about stats and it isn't just about head-to-head, I think that it helps your team and your program. And the bottom line, if you say, yeah, I heard it from the Big Ten, they admitted their error. They said that the call should not have been overturned. And you just hope that the people that are in that room in Dallas are paying attention, and they are.
Yeah, so that's the question to follow up, right? So tonight at 9-ish, in between the two Champions Classic games, they're going to bring the rankings are going to come out. Could you see the committee looking at the two in-state teams here and saying, well, one lost on the road on a controversial game based on what we've seen, and it was a close game, and the other team lost on the road to an unranked team by 2 scores? Could you see Michigan being ranked ahead of Michigan State and having Michigan State fans just melt down tonight?
Yeah, yes, I can see that. Michigan has the better loss. Michigan, and again, I'm not. If there's Spartan fans listening, think that I'm just putting on my hat. First of all, my Michigan hat. Please listen to last week's episode. But also, that's the problem. That's the problem. Is that it's basically recency bias. It's power conferences bias, and it's whatever is in the room, discussion in the room. So if they're looking at the eye test and the best loss, I think that the best loss is losing the rivalry game on the road narrowly to Michigan State rather than losing to an unranked team on the road by a more sizable margin.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at what they did with Oregon and Ohio State, I don't think they'll put Michigan State below Michigan in the rankings based on last week's. But it's food for thought.
See, man.
I mean, it should be on the field, but it's not on the field. It drives me crazy about college football. It's never on the field. Nothing's on the field. But again, if that's the world you live in, that's the game you got to play.
See, so you and I, we obviously differ on the scrutiny that should be placed on. Our opinions are different on the scrutiny that should be placed on officials. We also differ in how much we care about what Michigan State fans think. Because, see, Michigan State think their fans feel like they're entitled to respect. I hearken back to a line from Colonel Jessup. I don't give a damn what you feel like you're entitled to. I love that line, Mr. Weintraub. I love it. All right, let's switch gears. Let's go down to your state, the Sunshine State. And EA, what is going on with the University of Florida? I just saw something that I never thought I would see with the coach at Florida. His name is escaping me real quick. Dan Mullen. He fired Hevesy. Did you see that he fired Hevesy? That guy's been with him forever. He's been with him for. Yeah. You're firing that guy at this point, EA. You're I mean, you're this is panic mode down there in Gainesville at this point.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's not Hevesy. That's the problem. Is Mullen, that they're not playing for Mullen, and that's it's plainly obvious to see that they're not a resilient bunch the way that Michigan State is, and they're just not improving over the course of the year. And the considerable talent that he's recruiting there is not showing up when it matters most. And you can shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic, but I don't feel like that's going to change anything. It's really remarkable to see a team this talented play so poorly and so sloppy. I heard something. One of the many Gator fans that I've spoken to over the last week or so had a really kind of interesting comment. He said that it was over when Marco Wilson, he's the guy who threw the shoe against LSU last year, where basically they melted down at home against a bad LSU team, and the game turned when the Florida Gator player threw the shoe and got flagged for it. And he's saying his theory is that once Mullen didn't really come down on that player for that, then basically the message was sent that there wasn't a lot of discipline going to be on this team. Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm not involved. I'm not on the premises, but it does seem like a discipline issue, and it feels like everybody knows it. And firing Hevesy or Todd Grantham is not going to make a difference. And I have not spoken to one Gator fan who wants Mullen back. Last year when it was 2-4 in Ann Arbor, there were some people who wanted Harbaugh back. I thought he should have been kept, but I don't talk to anybody in Gator Nation who feels like Mullen deserves one more year.
Yeah, man, I look back to, because obviously they let Ron English go, and I thought that was a sign of panic, right? You're scapegoating your secondary coach. He wasn't the only coach they let go, and then he kept Todd Grantham, because that was always a weird relationship to me. I mean, I've rarely seen a head coach and an assistant be so publicly at odds as those two. And it just made me think that, man, maybe he can't fire the dude because of how much he's paid, because of his status. But he certainly fired a couple of his assistants that didn't feel like Todd Grantham was, that he was necessarily on board with that. But now he let Grantham go, like you said. And man, you fired everyone now. It looks like he's trying to save himself. I just don't know that he can at this point.
Yeah, I don't know either. One of the things that's interesting is that Mike Norvell up at Tallahassee, they lost to Jacksonville State. They started something like 0-4. And he took every question, every time people were asking about recruiting, about whether he can turn it around, about whether he lost the team. He sat there and answered every question and didn't lose his temper. Mullen, he gets these questions and he's surly and he's grouchy and he doesn't want to go there. And now Florida State is indisputably better, and things are calmer in Tallahassee. And in Florida, it's chaos. I mean, I think that when the buck stops with you, I think that the whole team understands that. And this is, again, kind of the risk when Harbaugh or anyone else says, it's not fair to the players, the referee. I get that, but you do risk that. If it doesn't stop completely with you, then the players sort of take the signal that you can blame others. Now, I think Mullen's handling or mishandling of the blame is a much bigger deal than almost anything else in college football. But Norvell, I think, deserves credit. If you just say, you know what, it's on me, then I think that is the signal that the players have to work, and there's not going to be any finger pointing at anywhere else.
All right, EA, let's switch gears here and go to the NFL. We're talking to Eric Adelson here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. So, the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, how much flack should they take? How much trouble should they be in for what appears to be blatantly flouting the rules here? He was not vaccinated. He's He's around the team, the sideline, the facilities, unmasked. He's at the very least being. It's not that you can be fined or held accountable for being deceptive with the media, but he's saying he was immunized when obviously he had not received his vaccination. How much scrutiny, how much criticism should he face? What should the consequence be for him and for the organization?
I personally, to me, Aaron Rodgers, that's his choice about whether he wants to get the vaccine or not. And he says he's allergic to something in the vaccine. I think that's a very reasonable excuse to give. I actually know someone who has an allergy to an ingredient in the vaccine. I think that's completely understandable.
He was allergic to the mRNA vaccines. He could have taken the Johnson & Johnson one.
Right. Okay. So that's the thing, is that by lying and keeping up with the lie and either forcing the Packers to go along with the lie or the Packers themselves are enabling this lie, that's where it gets to be incorrigible. That's where it gets to be something that the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, one of the faces of the league, one of the faces of Wisconsin, are just saying, you know what, I'm opting out. I don't want to deal with it, and I'm going to lie about it. And that has consequences far beyond the game, and that's where I find fault with what he did. I don't have a problem with people disagreeing about the vaccine. I have a problem with people flaunting the rules and making exceptions just for themselves, regardless of what it means for the people around them. And I'm not just talking about the team. He went to several parties unvaccinated. Mm-hmm. People staff those parties. You don't know what kind of issues that they have. You don't know what they're dealing with unvaccinated kids or kids that they're sending to school. And so if you walk into that situation with a party and you have a cook or a staffer or a server or a cleanup crew, and you know that if you're Aaron Rodgers, you walk in there and everybody from the bellhop to the valet person wants to be around you and get a picture and say hi, you are putting them at risk. And so to me, the most egregious part is not just the football aspect, but that you're unvaccinated. You say publicly that you are vaccinated or immunized, and then you go in this public setting with people who might be at risk, and you put them at continued risk or enhanced risk because you don't want to admit publicly what you've done.
Yeah, so when you see criticism from other NFL executives, and this is one of the storylines that ESPN followed. On one hand, you say, hey, this is an opportunity for them to take a shot at the team they're competing with, right? They can take a shot at the Packers, take a shot at Aaron Rodgers. But how much of it is that, EA, versus they were held to a standard? NFL sent out a memo, and everyone else, they're following these rules with their players. There's a accountability on their teams. Don't they have a right to call this out?
Of course. I mean, everything in football is about rules, and everybody has to. The league doesn't work if there's different rules for different teams, and that's. I mean, last night Justin Fields gets a late hit, and everybody's up in arms because that might have been called if it was on Ben Roethlisberger. That's one example. It's just like, if you're going to call it one way, call it one way for everybody. It's the same thing with his vaccine, where if a star player on one team has one set of rules and everybody else has to do something different, that's not fair. That's not fair to the entire league. So I don't think it's sour grapes. I don't think it's jealousy. I think it's an honest reaction, because it's hard to deal with all these protocols emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically, but everybody does it for the benefit of the league and for the benefit of the sport. And then, if you are a player on some other team, the Chiefs or the Texans or whatever, and you go home and your kid's like, well, Daddy, why can Aaron Rodgers not get vaccinated? You have to. Well, what do you say to that? So they bring that anger and resentment to work with them. They bring it home with them, and they don't get to question Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers goes on whatever show he wants and says whatever he wants about being victimized by the woke mob. and cancel culture, and doesn't really have to answer the hardest questions, which are coming from the other teams, the NFL community, and again, the people who are around him all the time, whether they're at the drive-thru or whether they're at the local store or whether they're serving him at the party.
All right. Well, EA, I appreciate the perspective. I want you to sit at the dinner table tonight and tell, I don't know which daughter it was that said, hey, should it be a tie? But tell her she has some allies up in Ann Arbor. She has friends back home. Let her know that.
I'm telling you that, it's Hope, my oldest, and she wears Michigan gear every single day. And she gets into it with somebody. If she sees anybody with a Michigan State or Ohio State, she's getting up in their grill. I mean, she is the most docile, peaceful, kind, sweet person on the planet. But, if I get a note from a teacher about something happened, I guarantee you it's because somebody said something to her about. So
she has a little bit of Sam Webb in her, is what you're saying. You gotta love it. There's a little bit of Sam Webb in her. We gotta love it.
You gotta love it.
No, she's all in, and I'm proud of her because she's 100% tried and true blue.
All right, well, EA, appreciate your time this week, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, see you guys.
All right, that was Eric Adelson here with us on the Michigan Insider. Look, Jim should not have had to be the one to talk about the admission. That's perpetuating or exacerbating the weak sauce from the Big Ten Conference.
So Sam, when you go to Big Ten Media Days next year, I have some questions for you to ask the director of officials. We'll get them ready for you. Since he speaks to the media once a year and otherwise hides, all right? I got questions we can send for that one time he speaks to the media. And I don't think he did it, that they even spoke to the media this year.
And you know what? Good for Jim. Because that, to me, could he have said no comment? Absolutely. He could have said that, but that doesn't help. What he did helps his team. Yeah, helps his team.
Yeah, and something I do disagree with EA. He says that you can take the cue from the coach about complaining about officials and say you just keep complaining. No, players see coaches going to bat for them, and they want to then go to bat for their coach. Jim is defending his players, and he is continuing to defend his players. His players love him for it. There's not a thing that Jim's done when it comes to how he's handled this thing with the comments of the officials or sending things to the league that's going to do anything but get the players behind him more because he's defending them. My guy my team got robbed. My player got a stat taken away. This should never have happened. I got my guys' backs. And his players know that. He's always done that. He's always had their back. One of the things about having a coach in one place for a long period of time.
Absolutely, EA. Ira, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We'll see. That'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks. As more jobs come up with coaches getting fired left and right.
Have you ever, I don't have time to talk about it today, we can get it to maybe tomorrow, 4 assistants at Nebraska, multiple Florida. There's 8 or 10 assistant coaches at Power 5 schools that have lost their jobs in the last week or so. I've never seen that level of assistant. And not for because they committed a crime or anything like that.
So you remember we were talking before the Washington game about Donovan. You see,
he's gone.
Like, he's gone.
Yeah, and Lake got suspended for a game because he pushed the kid or hit the kid, whatever it was that he actually did. I didn't see the full video, but it's very interesting. Nebraska did what they did because they cleared $3 million in room in salary for assistant coaches, and they wanted to get the word out. Hey, OCs, we have a job for you, but still very weird in the timing.
Yeah. All right, folks, we got to get out of here. I want to remind you, as I do every single day, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, you need to get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com, call 1-800-NEW-FORD to make it out to the lot 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. That's where you can get a great deal on a vehicle like the 2021 Ford Edge SEL, $229 a month with $2,000 down, or $322 a month with $500 down. Or how about the 2021 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, $312 a month with $2,000 down, or $374 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the 2022 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive. Get into that pickup for $228 a month with $2,000 down, or $290 a month with $500 down. Those are another great deals. Get on board with Brighton Ford. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.